My name is Lisan Jutras. I'm an editor at the Globe and Mail. The weekend of the G20, I was a social media columnist at the Globe and Mail. And I wasn't formally reporting, but the Globe had asked if they could use my tweets for their coverage. I had gone out that day to sort of see what I was told was a peaceful protest at Bay and Queen, maybe Bay and King. And I saw a bike rally at that point, and I thought it would be interesting to follow them. So I followed them to Queen and Spadina, at which point two directions of the intersection were blocked in an L shape. And at that point, nobody kind of knew where to go. So people just started kind of milling around, and this eventually led to the kettling. Basically, it's when police create small pods within a crowd by sort of clustering people together more and more tightly, so breaking off smaller groups within the crowd and then clustering them together extremely tightly. And then I believe that part of kettling is sort of an endurance thing where they just kind of let you stay trapped in one place for hours at a time. I was alone, and I was at the northwest corner where the McDonald's is, and I have since seen footage of people being warned by police that they were going to, I think they, made it clear that if these people didn't leave that they would be held. But at that particular corner, and of course, when you're kettled, you're in a very tight group. So I was quite oblivious to anything going on in other parts of the intersection. And I can tell you for sure that we were never told, leave or this is going to happen. So it was a bit strange because at one moment, I asked a police officer, where can I get out? And he pointed me to the east side, which was basically diagonally across from where I was. I wandered over there. There didn't seem to be an exit. I went back to that northwest corner again, and I asked the police there if I can get out, and he said no. And then I was very confused, and that was, I guess, the point at which the kettling had begun. And then immediately after that, the police broke off into smaller groups that pushed us into tight pockets. That didn't last too long. It was quite alarming when it did happen. A lot of people were getting kind of shoved, and I had a bike, there was someone with a dog. It was just bad, it was hard to maneuver. There was a guy who was like, kind of down at the heels and didn't know what was going on. It was a bad situation. And then once they had us in a very, very tight cluster, that lasted maybe 2 minutes or something, like really packed, just packed. And then after that, it slowly started to loosen. And then basically we were all just standing around together. And I sort of started talking to people, but yeah, I wasn't there with anybody. Not too long after that, maybe half an hour after that, it started to rain. And it was a record-breaking rainstorm, apparently. It really felt like a monsoon, and it was actually quite cold rain. The air wasn't that cold, but the rain was quite cold. And it went on the entire time I was kettled, so maybe 3 hours or 4 hours. And I was quite lucky in that I was wearing a quite thin raincoat over a t-shirt and shorts, I think. So I was sort of waterproofed, but after so many hours, I was just cold and wet like anybody else. But most people were in t-shirts. It was really awful. I'm getting cold thinking about it now. I was directed by one of the police who were sort of at the perimeter, keeping us at that intersection. I was directed by him to show it to the arresting officer. But really, as soon as I presented myself to the arresting officer in good faith, I was actually arrested without a chance to show any ID or credentials, and no amount of begging helped. I'm actually feeling shaky right now thinking about it and reliving it, and I think the worst thing for me was the point at which I was arrested and there were 4 officers doing the arresting, because I tried to make my case. A lot of people we all knew, we were watching people go through this breach in the perimeter where the arresting officer was, and people would just go and just kind of lamely give themselves up, which I don't blame them for at all. But I thought I had a case to be made, and when I said, don't do that, don't handcuff me, then 4 officers were involved in my arrest. And so I was just physically made powerless, and that was an extremely uncomfortable, overwhelming experience, and the incredible powerlessness, it was just shocking. Someone holding my hands behind my back, someone trying to take off my bike helmet, someone trying to remove my purse. This was all going on at the same time, and I'm trying to say, I'm with the Globe, I'm with the Globe, and it was a bit surreal. It was quite surreal. In the majority, it was people who were in the wrong place at the wrong time. I did talk to people around me. I'm sure some of them were protesters, but the people who I specifically asked were not, except right at the very end I met 2 sisters who were there protesting. But by and large, it was a very mixed crowd. There was a woman with bags of groceries on her way home. There was, like, I think a guy, probably more than one guy, who was curious and was there just out of curiosity. The woman behind me in the line, the police line, while we were being processed, she was a corporate lawyer, and she was with a friend of hers from out of town, and they were taking a shortcut, or that's what one of them said. So it was just a very mixed crowd, and I did not meet a lot of protesters. Again, was this the geography? Was it the fact that I was at this specific area of the corner? I don't know, because in footage I've seen more protesters, but definitely the people I talked to were in the majority not there protesting. I was arrested, and then there was this incredibly long lineup while they processed people still in the rain before putting them on the bus that would take us to the detention center. And I just stood in that line for probably half an hour to an hour, and having my paperwork filled out. Then I got put on the bus, and I just thought, this is it. I'm going to that dreaded detention center. But the bus just stayed at that intersection for about 20 minutes, getting full. And then we just all sat on it, nobody knowing what was going on. And then, you know, some senior police figure came onto the bus and said, you're all going to be released. You're not allowed to be in this area for the next 24 hours making trouble. And if we see you, you will be detained. And he actually, can I use a curse word the police used? He said this spiel, and then he looked at all of us and he said, now go the fuck home. It was pretty intense. It definitely was kind of a loss of innocence situation. Not that I had ever thought that the police always did everything right, but the fact that I wasn't given an opportunity to identify myself as press, or given any sort of rights, kind of, once I was arrested, I was being treated like a criminal. That really did make me feel, how would you say it? I didn't believe that the police were evil overall. I think that there are a few officers who will abuse their power when given the chance. And I think that the thing was fundamentally extremely badly managed and extremely badly organized. And most people didn't know what was going on the force. And they were different forces too, not Toronto police. So it's not a blanket statement about the police, but I definitely feel more wary now. Yeah. Well, I really waited for Bill Blair's announcement the next day because I could not imagine how they could justify it. I think that blew my mind. I just kept thinking to myself, I'm a rational person, and I can understand that police have a job to do here, and that they're worried about, you know, criminal elements, but I couldn't understand why they did that. It didn't make any sense to me, and I still have trouble understanding it, understanding a justification for it. I've seen Bill Blair speak a couple of times, and I have to say that he leaves me still with more questions even after his explanation.